In this tutorial, we are going to now continue from where we stopped, and this will be part 11. In the previous tutorial, we were able to set up the JWT, so we're able to retrieve data. But in this case, you can remember that we set the JWT in the .m file. So the JWT token is retrieved in the Axios config. You can see we retrieve the token here and then use it as header to the request going out from this application. But one thing you can be sure is that we are not going to be copying and pasting token here. So we are going to remove this. And in this tutorial, we are now going to set up the login page, and we are able to log in the user, retrieve the token, and save it in the local storage. And then we are going to retrieve it from the local storage here. Instead of retrieving it actually from here, we are going to retrieve it from the local storage. So I'm going to actually write it right now. So I'm going to say local storage.get item, and we call it token. For now, the token is not there. We are going to retrieve it. We are going to set it in the login. So one thing you want to learn about React is that there's something called the context hook. So if you want, for instance, the username, the access token, and any other data you want to be available across the application, you want to place it in the context hook. So because if you have this login component, you have some data coming in the login component, it might not be available easily in other components. And the way to share data across the application is to use the context hook. So the first thing we want to create is the context hook. So to do that, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this file the Auth provider, and I'm going to define my context hook inside this file. So what we want to keep track of is the user that logged in, the access token. We also want to have a flag that says whether the user is authenticated or he's not authenticated. So let's go ahead to start building up this file. So let me use RFC to generate the first initial, actually I may not just need this. So let's start building this from the scratch. Okay, so we want to first have the context, or the auth context. So I'm going to just create it. Const auth context. So const auth context, I'm going to create a new context. So is equal to create context. Okay. So create context takes no parameter, and it comes from React. And now I'm going to create the auth provider. Actually, that's this current file, so I can actually also use RFC. Okay, so we have, I don't want this default export, so I want to use an arrow function here. So auth provider, I'm going to later export everything. So let's have the auth provider is equal to, I'm going to just take out this. Now we want to specify everything we want in this auth provider. So we need a number of things. We need a function to log in the user. That function to log in the user will be here. The function to log out will also be here, because you can actually log in the user or log out the user from anywhere. For instance, the token expires, you want to log out the user. So the function to log in and log out are their functions you want to place in the context. You also need the user, you also need the token. So let me start by creating the user state, user set user, and this data will come from the login. So when the user logs in, the backend will send both the username and the access token. For now, we are sending the access token, but we are later going to go back to the backend to make it send both the username and the access token. All right, so set is equal to use state. The initial state is going to be null, okay? Now, one thing I want to mention is the auth provider, right? The auth provider is the wrapper around the context for all the components. So this should be available for all the components. So it means that this auth provider should also have access to the children or to its children, because it's going to pass down the parameters or the state, its own state, to its children. So I'm going to specify that here. So this auth provider is eventually going to be the highest level component in this application that will go in everything. All the other components is going to be like children to it, and it's going to make any state we create here available to its children. So let me create another state. It's going to be the token and set token, and it's going to be use state. Now the initial token, we are going to retrieve this token from the local storage. If we get it from the local storage, fine. If not, then we set it to empty string. So I'm going to say local storage.get item, and the name of the item is going to be token. If it's null, then we are going to return an empty string. Okay, perfect. Now we also need a state that holds if the user is authenticated or not. So this is going to be a true or false flag. So it's going to be is authenticated and set is authenticated, and it's going to be use state. Just make sure I don't have any typo. Set is authenticated. And now this is going to be a callback that returns true if the isAuthenticated variable is set in the local storage. So I'm going to say use state, and I'm going to provide a callback that actually checks if this flag is set. And the flag is set is in the local storage. So I'm going to return local storage.get item if is authenticated, okay, if this is true. Okay, so if this is true, then is authenticated will be true, right? Okay, so the next thing we want to now create, there are two functions we need to make available as well, and those are the login function and the logout function. In the login function, we are simply going to set all these parameters that are needed to indicate that the user is authenticated. So I'm going to create the login action. I'm going to call it login action. It's an async function, and it's going to take the data. So if you are trying to call the login function, you provide it with the data that is entered into the form. And this is like the login request, which is containing the username and the password. And this is what is going to be signed to the API backend to be used for authentication. So this is going to now, we are going to use this data and make a request to the login endpoint where we are going to fetch the access token from. We're going to wrap around a try-catch block around. So we are going to get a response by making a call. So the response is going to be, we are going to make an async call using Axios. Now we are not using Axios instance because Axios instance uses an authentication header, which is the access token. So for the login, you don't need to pass in any header or any authentication header or any token because you don't require any authentication to access the login page. So if I say the post and I'm going to say HTTP, I actually can use a base URL, but I need to now import it like I imported before. So if I go to Axios config, and actually import this base URL. So let me just copy it and then I can then use it. So let's go back to here, and I'm going to create one const, all right, and base URL at this time is going to be equal, is going to get this value, right? And now I can now use this base URL here. I'm going to use a string literal, and it's going to be base URL, and it's going to be /login, right? Is it backslash or forward slash? I think it's /login. Okay, so this response will come. And this response will contain a number of things. But before then, once we get this response without any errors, we are going to set the local storage and say the user is authenticated. So I'm going to say login local storage the set item, and I'm going to set the is authenticated flag. I'm going to set it to true, and we are going to set the user, although for now we don't have a user, so So let me just set user, and it's going to be response.data.user. Now response.data.user does not exist, so it's likely will be null, but later on we are going to do that, create it in the back end. The next thing is we are going to set the token, because the token has been retrieved and the token is available in response.data. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to place this token into the local storage. So I'm going to set the token in the local storage, and it's going to be token, and it's going to be response.data. All right. So I think, and at this point, once this is done, you have to return this function. And if error occurs along the line, we are going to throw the error. So let me throw, if anything happens within the try block, so error occurs, we are going to throw new error, and it's going to be response.message. And I think the response.message is going to be the error message. Okay, I think I'm mixing up something. So, oh yeah, I think I'm mixing up things. Okay, so now before we are going to do all this, we are going to actually make sure that the response was a success response. So that's my mistake. So if response.status is equal to 201 created, because it's created the access token. I think 201 created, I can't remember. Or the status is 200, okay. The status is 200, okay. Okay, I think this is the correct thing, what I needed to do. So if this is the case, we are going to then do all this we did before, right? Okay, great. Okay, so I think this is fine. So else, if it doesn't return in there, then it means an error have occurred. Then we are going to throw an exception just here. Okay, then outside the try block, we then have to catch. So this is like multiple layers of exception handling here. So I'm going to catch the error that occurred, and I'm going to log it to the console.log and error. Okay, so this is basically how the login works. Let me see. So it's trying to say this is an unreachable code, I think. Okay, so we have our login correct. The next thing we want to write now is the logout. The logout is simply going to do the opposite, right? So I'm going to say const logout is equal to, in this case, you simply clear things off, right? So when you log out, you just clear everything. So first, we're going to set the user to null, and we're also going to set the token to empty string, I like using single quotes. And we're also going to set the local storage, or we're going to remove the token from the local storage. So dot remove, and it's going to be token. And finally, we are going to set is authenticated to what? To false, because at this point we've logged out. Okay, so we have the login, logout, and every other state in the context. Now the next thing we want to do is to now return this context provider. So I'm going to just say return all context.provider, okay? And the value is all the state you would like to provide to the children. So it's going to be is authenticated, we have token, we have user, we have login action, we have logouts. Okay, so these are all the states that you want to make available to the children of the context. So I'm going to just close this, and then we are going to return the children inside here. Okay, so we now want to export things so that we'll be able to use it. So I'm going to say export default auth provider, and we also have to export use all, and this case is going to be the UseContext, and it's going to take the Auth context as parameter. Okay, so I'm going to say use it's going to take a callback, and it's going to return the context we created, use context, and we specify the Auth context. So this is basically how to set up the context hook for your application. So the next thing we do after now is to create the protected route. So what it means is a protected route, this is the route that requires authentication. So what we are trying to say is before the user accesses any page or any route in this application, he needs to be authenticated. So what we do is we are going to create the protected route. This protected route is going to check if the user is authenticated. If he's not authenticated, then he's going to be redirected to the login page. So let me create this protected route in the same place. Where did I create the auth provider? I actually want to create it inside pages, right? So I'm going to just move it inside pages, move. I think I'm not breaking anything. So let me go ahead to save everything just to make sure we don't have errors. Okay. I think everything still works. Let me just scroll down to make sure nothing breaks. Okay, so we are now going to create the protected route. So I'm going to create one more file. I'm going to call it protected route.js. And in this protected route, we are simply going to check if the user is authenticated. If he's authenticated, we are going to return the children of the context. Else, we are going to send him to the login page. So I'm going to use RFC, the shortcut to get the snippet. Again, I think I like using the arrow function. So I'm going to say, so here we are going to retrieve the authenticated parameter. Const is authenticated, and we are going to destructure it or retrieve it from the use auth. Okay. We are going to check if the user is authenticated before we return anything. So I'm going to remove this. So I'm going to say if not is authenticated. If not is authenticated, what is going to happen? We are going to return the user to the login page. So I'm going to say return. I'm going to navigate to equal to /login, and this is what happens. Otherwise we are going to just return the children. So I'm going to return the children. I think we specified it up. So protected route, we need the children here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to return the children right here, okay? And at the end, I'm going to export default protected route, okay? Okay, so this protected route, what do we do with it? We are going to now wrap the whole application with this protected route, right? So this protected route component we created, children is every other component if you wrap this protected route component around a route. So what it means is we are going to go to our main application, which actually contains the base route. So if you go to app.js, you can see all the routes here, right? So we have all the routes here, and what we are now saying is that we are returning default layout. Default layout is like the base layout of the application. So every other component in this application is wrapped inside this default layout. So instead of returning just default layout, we are going to return protected route, and the children, one of the children of protected route is going to be default layout, right? So I think you get the grip. You have a grip on the concept now. So I'm going to drag this and put it right here. So what it means is protected route is going to check any route you try to visit. So we have this path to be a wildcard. So this is like a global path. We are going to check. It's going to check all the components, all the routes you want to visit. All these other routes you see here doesn't require any authentication. You don't need to protect the login route or the register route or the 404 route. Okay, I think now we are good to go. But one more thing we need to do, we need to go to the login page. Now here in the login page, we want to actually retrieve the username and the password and then call the login action from the from the context, right? So if you look at the login here, right, you have login and you have button is a link, and okay, this is a forgot password. So this is what I was trying to say. This is login. Now the click here, when the user clicks on login, we want to handle login by calling the login action. So let me create on click here, and it's going to be handle login. We don't have this function, but I'm going to go ahead to create it right now. Handle login. So I'm going to say const handle login, and it's going to take the event, which is actually that button, and so it's going to be an async function, okay, because this login eventually will call the login action, which will then make an API call, so it should be async. We're going to prevent the default behavior, so I'm going to prevent. So we want to prevent the default form submission behavior because we are not submitting a form, but we are handling a click event. So I'm going to try, and we are going to now call the login action. Login action. Oh, sorry. So we should be actually inside the login components here, and I think that was why I couldn't automatically retrieve the function. So here we have our login. Okay, now the input is the username and the password, right? So I'm going to, we have this login, we have the input is the username and the password, right? Which is going to be coming from the form. So, and this, the input we are going to actually send to the login action, which we created as part of the context. So it's going to be input, and set input is going to be use state, and we are going to set an initial state, username, and the username and the password. Okay, so password is password, and this input we are going to retrieve it from the form, right? Okay, we will then retrieve the login action here, because that login action is available in the context. So const login action is available in the context. So I'm going to say use auth. Okay, so it's available here. I'll also like to redirect or navigate the user to the dashboard. At successful login, I want to navigate the user to the dashboard, and there is a React hook called useNavigate. Can actually use the navigate component like we did before, but let me just show you that you can also use the useNavigate. So I'm going to create a state called the navigate, and it's going to use the navigate context. Okay, let's now go to the login action. So the login action is going to take the input. Now the input is going to be coming from the form on this component. We are going to take a look later on this form. Okay, so we are trying to do login action, right? And if this succeeds, we are going to navigate the user to the dashboard. This dashboard is this dashboard right here, right? It's the dashboard. Okay, but if it doesn't work, if there is a failure, and there's an error that occurs, I think I'll just do a console.log here. Console.log log and say error occurred. Okay, so how do we make sure that data coming from the input boxes, they are available in the input state? So we will need another function that handles the input, that takes this input by the user and make it available in the state. So I'm going to just drop down these ones. The name, we are going to set it to the username, and we are going to set the onChange. We are going to create a function that handles the input. So it's not handle login, but handle input. And we are going to do the same for the password. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to use it here. And in this case, the name is going to be password. I'm going to hit this to drop down. Also this one, and I think we should be fine. We need to now handle the input. So when a user types something on the input box, we want to update the input state. So I'm going to say const handle input is equal to the event that raised the input is equal to, and we are going to now get the name and the value. Name value of what is entered is equal to e dot targets. If I'm not mistaken, okay, we have e dot target, right? Why is it not giving me IntelliSense? Okay, e dot target, that is fine. Okay, and we are now going to set or update the input. Set input, and it's going to take the previous input. So we are going to spread operator to update the previous input with the new data value. Okay, I think we are good to go. I don't know if this will work, but let's see. Okay, finally, I want to set the logout link in the. So I want to be able to click on this log account and it takes us to the routes us to the login page. So that's what the last thing we want to do now. To find this logout, which is called log account, and it takes me here. So you can see right here. Okay. So here in this place, we are going to have onClick should take us to the login component. Actually, onClick on this button is going to log out the user. So onClick on this is going to log out the user. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create. So we have this drop down ref item. So we have href is nothing. So first I want to set the onClick. Not on complete, but onClick. OnClick is going to be logout user, and is going to show us nav link. Okay, so if you click on it, it's going to log out the user, but we don't have the logout user function. Remember, the logout user function is available in the context. So let's go fix that. Okay, so here we want to write the logout function. So I'm going to say const logouts, logouts. So the logout function, we wrote it in the context. So it's available in the UseContext. So I'm going to say use Auth, sorry. Okay. And do we actually need to navigate? I don't think so. Did we ever use navigate? Oh yes, I think we will use navigate to log out, to actually navigate the user to the login page in case after he's after he logs out. So I'm going to say const navigate is equal to use navigate. Okay. And at this point, we are now going to say const logout user. So there is logout user that we actually specified as a callback to the button click, to the logout button click. So I'm going to say logout user is going to be a callback, and we are going to just log out the user. So here we don't need anything. And then we navigate the user to where? To the login page. So this is a lot, right? So I think everything should be fine. So I'm going to save everything. Hopefully we don't have any errors, but unfortunately we have. React has already been declared in Auth provider.js. So let's see. I imported React from React. Okay, let's take it out. And let me save everything and let's see. Okay, so I'm going to simply quit and clear my terminal and restart the application, npm start. And it seems to work. So I'm going to click and let's see. So we've got a problem. I don't know. So let's go to inspect the console. Okay, it tells us the structure property is authenticated of use auth is undefined in protected route line. Okay, so to fix this problem, there is just one or two more steps we need to take. I forgot. So we need to actually wrap the application around our Auth provider. So if we go to the app, which is right here, we need to wrap the whole application around inside out our Auth provider. So instead of just returning a hash router here, we are going to return, I'm going to wrap everything around Auth provider, which is right here, and then we are going to move this in here. Now we also will need to wrap this hash router. Instead of using the hash router, we are going to wrap around or inside a browser router. So by the way, if I save everything and go back to the UI, okay, I think browser router, hash router is okay. So let's just try to test and see what we have. So what I'm going to do now is, so let's try to go to brands, okay? So brands, we see that we don't have anything. So let's try to log in and then we can then go to branch. So I'm going to the login page and it says logout is not a function. Oh, okay. So logout is not a function. So let's go check what the problem is. If we go to the provider, we have logout. Okay, so we have logout to be, it's actually case sensitive. So it's actually logout. And if we go back to the login page and let's fix this. So it's going to be, sorry, I think it should be somewhere in the header. So app header drop down component. So it's actually logout right here. Okay, I think we fixed it. So let me just check. And we have to export it here, logout. Okay, so let's save everything and let's go back to our UI. Okay, so if I try to log out now by clicking here, so we logged out, and let's just open up the storage so that we can see what gets added. So I'm going to try to log in. I'm going to enter the correct username and the correct password, and I click on login and nothing happened. So let's go check why nothing happened when we clicked on login in the app header. Okay, I think that the login action right here is actually not the structured. So we actually should wrap it around curly braces. So I think this should solve the problem. Okay, so we have login action and I'm going to just allow the process to continue. So I'm going to save all and let's go back to try. I think this should solve the problem now. Okay, so we're able to log in completely, but it says local storage is not a function in Auth provider 2317. But let's check our local storage to see what we have. So it actually adds it's authenticated is true, but it didn't add the token. And it gave us an error that says local storage is not a function in Auth provider 2317. So let's go check. Oh, so it's actually local storage dot set item, okay, local storage dot set item, and let's go ahead to try one more time. I'm going to go to try to access brands. So here we don't have anything because it's not authorized. So let's now log in and see if we have access to brands. So I'm going to log in again, like before, log in. And you can see access token came right here. So I hope this will work at this point. So I'm going to go to brands. Oh, great. Okay, so brands is now accessible. So you get that access token. And if you look at the local storage now contains the access token. So let's go to the local storage, just take a look. So you can see the token you can see is authenticated. Let's log out and see what happens. So I'm going to click on logout and it takes out everything. So if I click on login, nothing happens. Let's just, to make sure, I'm going to say kindson and I enter the password and it logs in and I go to brand, and of course it retrieves the access token, and I go to brands and it retrieves the data as well. Okay, so this is the much we can take. We've been able to implement access token, login and logout. So this is our logout function. When you click on the log account, it logs out the user, and of course you can then log in from here. Okay, so the next question now is, where do we go from here? So the next thing we might be able to do is we are going to now go on to set up all other components. So we have a number of things like the order calculations, the statistics that displays on the UI, the percentage increase across the months. We also have to talk about refresh token, file upload and download, deploy to AWS, deploy to Azure. So there's a lot of things here we have to continue from here. So first, let's continue in part 12, I think, and we are going to set up other components, and then we see how we can now improve the UI functionality and be able to place orders and manage our products and all that. I'd like to remind you to subscribe to my channel. If you've not subscribed, please click on that subscribe button below so that you don't miss any updates from me. And also, if this has been informative for you, please consider liking this video and also click on join to join the community so that we can work on this together. So we see in the next part.